You ever feel overwhelmed by, well, everything going on in the world? You are definitely not alone. In this explainer, we're going to unpack an argument from John Jones for a completely different take on hope. We're not talking about wishful thinking here. We're talking about hope as a concrete, deliberate strategy for action. So let's just start with a feeling I think we all know, that sense that we're living through this convergence of crises, right? It's not just one thing. It's like all these huge, complex problems are hitting us at once, and they're all tangled up with each other. And when you lay them out, it's pretty clear we're dealing with a kind of perfect storm. You've got ecological limits being pushed, a chaotic climate, our society's feeling more and more divided, and our institutions seeming kind of fragile. These aren't separate issues anymore. They're all feeding off each other, making everything more intense.
Okay, but here's where the whole argument takes a really interesting turn. It poses this big question. What if the real problem isn't that we lack solutions or brilliant people or good intentions? What if the deepest crisis of all is just our inability to coordinate all that amazing effort? So let's dig into that idea, this crisis of coordination. The core of it is that all our best efforts are happening in their own little worlds. You know, think of it like a bunch of individual threads. Each one might be really strong on its own, but if you don't have a way to weave them together, you'll never get a strong piece of fabric. And it's that fragmentation that's holding us back. The diagnosis here is pretty sharp. We have countless people and groups doing absolutely incredible work. So the problem isn't a lack of trying. The problem is we're missing a shared system, what the source material calls a mature operating environment, to actually weave all those separate efforts into one powerful, coherent force.
And this failure to coordinate, well, it puts us at a really critical fork in the road. We're facing a pretty stark choice. And it's not just about policy. It's about what we fundamentally believe is even possible. It's a choice between two very, very different futures.
On the one hand, you've got this path called managed decline, which, let's be honest, is basically about managing the breakdown. It's a quiet acceptance of defeat. The other path, though, is what's called co-creative possibility, and that's all about actively building a different future with courage, with imagination, and most importantly, with coordinated action. And John Jones frames this choice in no uncertain terms. He says, look, acknowledging the real challenges we face, our ecological limits, that's just being a realist. But accepting that a future of breakdown and fear is the best we can do, that, he argues, is giving up way too early. That's premature surrender. So, if we choose possibility, if we reject surrender, what's next? The argument is that we actually have to build something new. We have to build the very infrastructure, the connective tissue that we've been missing all along. And the proposed solution for this is called Phoenix. Now, it's really important to get this. This is not just another app you download. The best way to think about it is like a shared nervous system. It's an infrastructure designed to help all these different groups finally see each other, understand their common ground, and see how their work can fit together into a bigger picture. And the heart of this system is something called the synergy engine. Think of it like a matchmaker, but for collective action. Its whole job is to scan the landscape of all these different efforts and find the hidden opportunities for collaboration. It connects groups that could be creating massive value together, but right now they might not even know the other exists. The whole method is actually pretty straightforward. It's a 4-step process. First, you just map everything out. Who has what skills? Who needs what resources? Second, you start to identify those synergies to stop people from reinventing the wheel. Third, you can see where the real bottlenecks are. And finally, all of that groundwork lets everyone move from working in isolation to taking truly synchronized collective action. Okay, I know this can all sound a bit abstract, so let's make it really concrete. How does a system like this actually move us from our separate silos to real synergy? What does this look like on the ground, in practice? Well, let's take ecology. Right now, a forest restoration project might be a totally isolated effort. But with a system for coordination, that same project gets woven into public health programs, local school curriculums, even the regional economy. It stops being some niche side project and becomes a central part of community life. And you see the exact same shift happen in governance. Instead of institutions making slow decisions based on old, siloed data, this new model creates a shared real-time picture of what's actually happening. And that allows communities to use their local knowledge to build governance that's way more responsive and way more effective. All of this brings us back to the core message of this whole thing, which is a radical and frankly, a much more useful redefinition of what hope even is. So here's the big takeaway. Hope is not a passive feeling. It's not just crossing your fingers. In this framework, hope is an action. It is the deliberate, conscious choice to build the systems, the architecture that makes cooperation easier, more visible, and more rewarding for everybody involved. And this quote from John Jones just sums it all up perfectly. Hope isn't denying how serious our situation is. It's the sustained commitment to the idea, the still open possibility that we can actually meet this moment with more wisdom and more coherence than we've shown in the past.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. It completely flips the script. The question isn't whether we're justified in feeling hopeful. The real question is, are we willing to do the hard work of building the structures, that connective tissue, that will actually warrant our hope? Are we ready to build the conditions that make a better future truly possible